I, 42M, have been married to my wife Sarah, 39F, for 6 years now. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue back in 2017, and things moved pretty quickly between us. Sarah has a son Paul, 19M, from her previous marriage. Paul's father passed away in a car accident when Paul was 8, leaving Sarah to raise him alone until I came into their lives when Paul was 12. The relationship between Paul and me was always cordial but distant. He never called me dad or showed any interest in building a father-son relationship, which was completely fine with me. I understood that losing his father at such a young age must have been traumatic, and I didn't want to force any kind of relationship. I was happy just being there as a supportive adult figure in his life. Sarah and I got married in 2018, and we moved into a house I owned in a nice suburban neighborhood. Paul seemed to adjust well to the change, though he kept mostly to himself. He was always a bright kid, consistently getting good grades and participating in various academic competitions. I supported his academic pursuits and often helped him with his college applications and essays. My grandmother, who practically raised me after my parents divorced when I was young, passed away last year at the age of 92. She was an incredible woman who had built quite a life for herself. She worked as a real estate agent in the 1960s when it was uncommon for women to have such careers, and she managed to amass significant wealth through smart investments. In her will, she left me her house in a historic neighborhood, worth around $800,000, and several family heirlooms, including jewelry that belonged to my great-grandmother and antique furniture pieces that have been passed down through generations. The will specifically stated that these items should stay within our bloodline, as they represented our family's history and heritage. Paul had met my grandmother several times during family gatherings, and she was always kind to him, though she made it clear to everyone that her inheritance was meant to stay within the family. She even explained this to Paul once when he admired an antique pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather. Last month, I was helping Sarah with some work documents on our shared family computer when I accidentally stumbled upon some concerning emails in the browser history. Paul had been in secret communication with a lawyer who specialized in contesting wills. The emails dated back several months, even before my grandmother's passing. As I dug deeper, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Paul had forged my signature on multiple documents, creating a paper trail to support his claim to the inheritance. He had fabricated entire email conversations, pretending to be me, where I promised him a share of the inheritance. These forged emails included specific details about the house and heirlooms, showing how meticulously he had planned this deception. The lawyer he was working with had a reputation for taking on controversial inheritance cases, and the email showed that Paul had been paying him consultation fees using money he claimed was from his part-time job at the local library. However, I later found out he had been secretly using one of our credit cards that was meant for emergencies only. When I confronted Paul about this, his reaction shocked me even more than the discovery of his deception. Instead of showing any remorse, he became aggressive and entitled. He said that since I had been acting as his father for the past 6 years, he deserved a portion of the inheritance. He argued that it wasn't fair for me to inherit such valuable property while he had nothing, despite having just received a full scholarship to an Ivy League college. Sarah's initial reaction was to defend Paul. She tried to minimize his actions, saying he was just a confused teenager who made a mistake. But when I showed her the forged documents and emails, even she couldn't deny the calculated nature of his deception. These weren't the actions of a confused kid, this was a carefully planned attempt at fraud. After spending several sleepless nights considering my options, I decided to report the forgery to both the authorities and his college. I know this might seem harsh to some people, but I couldn't just let this slide. Forgery is a serious crime, and Paul's actions showed a disturbing lack of ethics and integrity. The college took immediate action. They conducted their own investigation and decided to revoke his scholarship based on character concerns. They explained that their scholarships weren't just about academic achievement but also about integrity and ethical behavior. Since then, our home has become a battleground. Sarah barely speaks to me anymore, spending most of her time either crying in our room or on the phone with Paul, who's now living with his maternal grandparents. The grandparents have been calling me constantly, leaving angry voicemails about how I've destroyed their grandson's future over just some old house and furniture. But this isn't about the material value of the inheritance. This is about trust, respect, and basic human decency. Paul didn't just try to steal property, he methodically planned to deceive someone who had supported him for years. He was willing to commit forgery and fraud to get what he wanted, showing no regard for the law or the relationships he would destroy in the process. Sarah is now talking about moving out to stay with her parents. She says she can't be with someone who would ruin her son's future. But I don't think I'm the one who ruined anything. Paul made his own choices, and now he's facing the consequences of those choices. I feel terrible about how everything has turned out, but I stand by my decision to report his actions. Some people might think I went too far by getting his scholarship revoked, but I believe that actions should have consequences, especially when those actions involve criminal behavior. Ida? Update 1: Things have gotten significantly worse since my last post. The situation has spiraled in ways I never expected, and some disturbing truths have come to light. Sarah moved out last week to stay with Paul at her parents' house. She said she needed space to think things through, but what happened next revealed that there was much more to the story. The day before she left, Sarah finally broke down and revealed something that completely blindsided me. Paul's biological father had apparently left him a substantial trust fund that was supposed to be accessed when he turned 18. The fund was set up through his father's life insurance payout and some investments, estimated to be worth around $300,000. However, his father's family had somehow managed to drain the fund completely when Paul was younger. Sarah explained that her ex-husband's brother had been named as the trustee of the fund. He had apparently used a series of legal loopholes to transfer the money gradually over several years. By the time Sarah discovered what was happening, most of the money was gone, supposedly invested in failed business ventures. When she threatened legal action, the family countered with threats of their own. This is where things get even more complicated. Sarah admitted that she had known about my grandmother's will months before she passed away. She had actually been the one who encouraged Paul to look into legal ways to claim a part of the inheritance. She believed it would be a way to make up for the trust fund he lost. When I asked her why she didn't just talk to me about helping Paul financially, she broke down completely. Through her tears, Sarah revealed that her ex-husband's family had threatened to expose something from her past if she ever tried to recover the trust fund money or take legal action against them. She wouldn't tell me what this information was, but she said it could ruin her relationship with Paul if he ever found out. This was why she had chosen to go behind my back instead of having an honest conversation about helping Paul. I was stunned to discover that the woman I had been sharing my life with for 6 years had been plotting against me all this time. It made me question every moment of our marriage. Had everything been a lie? Was she with me just because she saw me as a way to secure her son's future? The situation has become even more messy because Paul's maternal grandparents have now hired a high-profile lawyer to try and get his scholarship reinstated. They're claiming that I reported the forgery out of malice and spite, trying to paint me as a jealous stepfather who couldn't stand to see his stepson succeed. They've even claimed that I had verbally promised Paul a share of the inheritance multiple times in front of witnesses. These claims are completely false, but they've managed to gather several of Sarah's friends who are willing to testify that they heard me make these promises. One of them even claims to have a video from a family barbecue where I supposedly discussed sharing the inheritance with Paul, though conveniently, they haven't been able to produce this video yet. My own parents have gotten involved now, and they're furious. My mother has started going through years of family videos and photographs to prove that Sarah and Paul had been planning this for months. She found recordings from last Christmas where I specifically talked about how my grandmother wanted the inheritance to stay within our bloodline, directly contradicting the claims being made by Paul's grandparents. The whole situation has started affecting other aspects of my life too. Some mutual friends have taken Sarah's side, believing her story about me being vindictive. I've started receiving angry messages on social media from people I don't even know, calling me all sorts of names for destroying a young man's future. Someone even posted negative reviews about my business online, though I managed to get them removed. The stress has been taking its toll on me. I've barely been sleeping, and it's hard to focus on work. The house feels empty without Sarah and Paul, but at the same time, I feel relieved not to be walking on eggshells anymore. Every time I look at my grandmother's furniture or jewelry, I'm reminded of how the people I trusted most tried to take advantage of me. Sarah calls occasionally, but it's always to try to convince me to drop the charges against Paul and help get his scholarship reinstated. She doesn't seem to understand or care about how their actions have affected me. She keeps saying that families should support each other, conveniently forgetting how they betrayed my trust and tried to steal my family's inheritance. I've hired a security camera system for the house because I don't trust Sarah not to try to take any of the heirlooms while I'm at work. It might seem paranoid, but after everything that's happened, I feel like I can't be too careful. I've also started documenting every interaction with Sarah and Paul's family, just in case they try to twist things around again. Through all of this, I keep thinking about my grandmother and how heartbroken she would be to see her death causing such chaos in our family. But then I remember how specific she was about wanting to keep these heirlooms in the family, and I know I'm doing the right thing by protecting her wishes. Update: 2 more truth bombs have dropped in the past couple of weeks, and honestly, I'm still trying to process everything. A family friend who works at Sarah's bank reached out to me with some disturbing information. They probably shouldn't have shared this information, but they felt I needed to know. Apparently, Sarah had taken out several high-interest loans totaling nearly $50,000 in the months leading up to my grandmother's death. The timing lined up perfectly with when Paul started meeting the lawyer. At first, I couldn't understand why they would need such a large amount just to pay a lawyer. That's when I started digging deeper, and what I found made me feel physically sick. Paul hadn't actually earned a scholarship entirely on merit. Sarah had paid a college consultant named Mark Reynolds to polish his application. I found this out when I was going through our joint account statements and noticed several large payments to an education consulting firm. I did some research on this consultant and discovered that he's currently under investigation by the FBI for helping students fake their extracurricular activities and awards. He reportedly charged anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 for his premium package, which included creating fake volunteering certificates, inflating leadership positions, and even fabricating research projects. The college found out about this during their investigation after I reported the forgery. Apparently, several other students who had worked with Reynolds were also having their admissions and scholarships reviewed. This was another major reason why they revoked Paul's scholarship. His entire application was potentially fraudulent. But the revelations didn't stop there. My grandmother's former caretaker, Maria, contacted me last week. She had been taking care of my grandmother for the last 3 years of her life, spending almost every day with her. Maria told me something that made my blood boil. Sarah and Paul had been visiting my grandmother when I wasn't around, sometimes showing up early in the morning before I came to visit. According to Maria, they would try to convince my grandmother to change her will, telling her that Paul was like her own great-grandson and deserved to be included. My grandmother, who was struggling with early stages of dementia in her final months, had been confused and distressed by these visits. She had documented everything in her personal diary, which Maria still had in her possession. Reading my grandmother's diary entries was heartbreaking. She wrote about feeling pressured and confused, about how Sarah would bring her favorite pastries and try to guilt her into changing the will. There were entries where she expressed worry about telling me because she didn't want to cause problems in my marriage. The last entry about these visits was particularly painful. She wrote about how she felt she couldn't trust anyone anymore. Paul finally reached out to me yesterday, but not to apologize. Instead, he sent me a long email detailing how he never saw me as a father figure and had only pretended to accept me because his mother had begged him to play nice. He said he felt entitled to the inheritance because he had to put up with me for 6 years, watching me parade around in his father's place. He went on to say that I was never good enough for his mother and that they had both laughed about how clueless I was behind my back. He claimed that Sarah had only married me because she saw me as financially stable and easy to manipulate. The email ended with him saying that even with his scholarship revoked, he was still going to succeed in life just to prove me wrong. The most bizarre part is that he copied his grandparents on this email, and they actually replied all to say they were proud of him for standing up to his bully. They seem to live in some alternate reality where I'm the villain who came into their lives and destroyed everything, completely ignoring the fact that their grandson and daughter-in-law tried to commit fraud. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, who advised me to save everything but not respond. He thinks Paul sent this email hoping to provoke me into saying something they could use against me. I'm trying to stay calm, but reading how they had been mocking me in my own home for years, while I was working hard to provide a good life for them, makes me feel like such a fool. Update 3: The past few months have been a roller coaster, and things have finally come to a head. Sarah filed for divorce last week. Her lawyer sent over a settlement proposal that honestly made me laugh out loud. They're asking for half of my grandmother's inheritance, claiming it's marital property since my grandmother passed away while Sarah and I were married. They're also trying to claim half of my business assets, saying she supported me emotionally while I was starting it. My lawyer assured me that their claims have no legal standing. Inherited property is considered separate property unless it's been mixed with marital assets, which I made sure never happened. As for my business, I have documentation showing that all investments came from my pre-marriage savings and a small business loan in my name only. The college consultant scandal that Paul was involved in has blown up into a major federal investigation. Mark Reynolds, the consultant, was arrested last month. The investigation revealed that Sarah had paid him $30,000 from our joint account for his premium package, which included creating fake volunteer certificates, fabricated research projects, and inflated leadership positions for Paul's college applications. I've filed a police report about the unauthorized use of these funds. Sarah had no right to spend that money without my knowledge, especially for fraudulent purposes. The bank statements show she made these payments while I was away on business trips, probably hoping I wouldn't notice large withdrawals among the regular business expenses. Paul's grandparents have finally stopped their campaign against me, but only because they're now caught up in their own legal troubles. Turns out they knew about the college application fraud and had actually contributed some money towards it. The FBI is investigating them for possible conspiracy charges. I've decided to sell my grandmother's house. Not because I need the money, but because keeping it would mean constantly being reminded of this betrayal. Every room holds memories of how Sarah and Paul plotted behind my back, probably laughing at how trusting I was. I'm using part of the money from the sale to set up a scholarship fund at the local community college, specifically for students who demonstrate genuine academic achievement and integrity. It feels like the right way to honor my grandmother's memory. Some of our mutual friends have started reaching out to apologize. They said Sarah had told them a completely different story, painting me as controlling and abusive. Now that the truth about the college fraud is out, they're realizing who was really being manipulated in this relationship. Sarah tried to come by the house last week to talk things through. I refused to let her in and told her all communication needs to go through our lawyers. She started crying, saying she only did everything for Paul's future and that I should understand a mother's love. I just closed the door. I'm done being manipulated by her tears. I've blocked Sarah, Paul, and their entire family on everything. My lawyer is handling all communication now. The only updates I get are through him, and honestly, I prefer it that way. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently, if there were signs I missed early on. But then I remember finding those forged documents, reading my grandmother's diary entries about their secret visits, and discovering the extent of their deception. I made the right choice. The house is being shown to potential buyers next week. Once it's sold, I'm planning to move to another state where I'm opening a new branch of my business. It's time for a fresh start, away from all these painful reminders. Sometimes the best way to heal is to walk away completely.